Jimmy Connors suggests what's badly lacking from Aryna Sabalenka's game as she fails to win the Australian Open title. Aryna Sabalenka was unable to win the Australian Open final for the second consecutive year, this time losing to Aryna Sabalenka in 3 sets. Sabalenka, who lost to Madison Keys in the 2025 final, led 3-0 in the final set before losing 5 consecutive games to the Kazakhstani star. Sabalenka eventually lost the match 4-6, 6-4, 4-6, and was later told she broke a key tennis rule during the contest. Questions must be asked of Sabalenka, who has now lost 3 of the past 4 Grand Slam finals she has participated in. Jimmy Connors has weighed in on Sabalenka's Grand Slam final troubles, questioning the world number one's ability to close out matches. Jimmy Connors questions Aryna Sabalenka's killer instinct. Speaking on the Advantage Connors podcast, the 5-time US Open champion said, "Sabi, once again. I think she had 3-0 in the third, right? I might take a little ribbon for this, but I have to say it. You have to have that killer instinct. You got to, especially when you've got somebody in the finals like that, you got to get on top and you got to do everything you can to stay on top and keep the pressure on and cut down on your mistakes, and don't give any points away and make your opponent earn everything. And I know she's had bad luck in the past, losing a number of finals she maybe shouldn't have. But up 3-0 in the third in a major like that, you got to close the deal. And she's way too good a player, brother, to not be able to do that. She has in the past, don't get me wrong. But to let a lead like that go, I want to see how she bounces back from that. She has in the past again, and she's come through and won majors. But man, she's got to get that killer instinct, and when you have it, take it, grab it, and get to the finish line." Connors later added, "I wasn't criticizing Sabi. I was just expressing my view. Closing out matches in the biggest moments can make or break a career, and if Aryna Sabalenka is not careful, she could be considered as a player who underachieved when her career comes to a close." Sabalenka has won 4 of the 8 Grand Slam finals she has contested. Comparatively, Iga Swiatek has won all 6 of the major finals she has played. The Belarusian simply must find a way to improve her record in finals. The 2026 Australian Open final was in her hands, yet the trophy managed to slip away, despite Rybakina's relatively average serving performance. Jimmy Connors' Grand Slam final record. Connors won his first 3 Grand Slam finals on the tour, the 1974 French Open, Wimbledon and US Open. 3 consecutive major final losses followed in 1975 at the Australian Open, Wimbledon and US Open. A year later, Connors regained the US Open title, defeating Bjorn Borg in the final. In 1977, Connors lost another 2 finals, at Wimbledon and the US Open, before a further loss in the 1978 Wimbledon final to Borg. Connors' slam final record improved thereafter. He won 4 consecutive finals, the 1978 US Open, 1982 Wimbledon and US Open and the 1983 US Open. Connors lost his final Grand Slam final to John McEnroe at the 1984 Wimbledon Championships. Connors finished his career with 8 Grand Slam titles won from 15 major finals. What Jimmy Connors would say, the missing edge in Aryna Sabalenka's Australian Open quest. Jimmy Connors never believed tennis was won by prettiness, or politeness, or even consistency. Tennis, to Connors, was a street fight disguised as a sport, a battle of nerve, will, and ego where the last person still believing in themselves walks away with the trophy. That's why Connors' hypothetical verdict on Aryna Sabalenka's latest Australian Open disappointment cuts deeper than a critique of forehands or footwork. It's not about the power she possesses, because she has more than enough of that. It's about the power she doesn't fully trust when it matters most. Sabalenka didn't lose the Australian Open because her game is incomplete. She lost because, in Connors' terms, she blinked. And blinking in Melbourne is fatal. The illusion of power. Sabalenka's game is built like a modern monument to brute force. Her serve can flatten opponents. Her ground strokes arrive heavy, violent, and unrelenting. On paper, and on practice courts, she looks inevitable. But Connors would scoff at inevitability. Power doesn't scare anyone, he'd say. Belief does. The problem is not that Sabalenka lacks weapons. It's that she sometimes treats them like liabilities when the pressure spikes. Instead of doubling down on aggression, she hesitates. She steers. She negotiates with fear instead of attacking it. Connors never negotiated. When pressure mounted, he swung harder, not because it was safer but because it was honest. Sabalenka, by contrast, occasionally abandons her identity in the most important moments, opting for caution in a game that has never rewarded her for playing small. The missing mean streak. Connors played every match as if someone had personally insulted him. That edge, the sense that winning was not optional, was his greatest weapon. Sabalenka has fire, but it flickers. You see it in her body language after a double fault. In the brief downward glance. In the shoulders tightening just enough to invite doubt. At the Australian Open, those moments accumulated. Not dramatically. Quietly. And quietly is how champions lose Grand Slam finals. Connors would argue that Sabalenka's biggest deficiency isn't technical. It's emotional ruthlessness. The great champions don't just want to win, they want their opponents to feel them winning. Connors imposed himself psychologically. So did Serena Williams. So does Novak Djokovic. Sabalenka sometimes lets the match breathe, lets the opponent believe, lets momentum wander. At this level, belief is contagious, and lethal when it spreads to the wrong side of the net. The war inside the match. One of Connors' enduring lessons is that tennis is not played against the opponent across the net. It's played against the voice in your own head. Sabalenka's Australian Open loss felt less like a tactical defeat and more like an internal negotiation gone wrong. Should she go for it? Should she pull back? Should she trust the swing that brought her here? Connors never asked those questions mid-match. He asked them beforehand, and then burned the answers into muscle memory. Sabalenka's power-based game demands absolute commitment. Half swings produce full errors. Hesitation turns winners into liabilities. When she second-guesses herself, the margins disappear. Connors would say the missing piece is clarity, knowing exactly who you are on court and refusing to become anyone else, regardless of scoreline, crowd, or consequence. Melbourne doesn't forgive. The Australian Open is uniquely cruel. The heat exposes fatigue. The crowd amplifies emotion. The long rallies demand not just stamina, but conviction. Sabalenka has the physical tools to dominate Melbourne. What she lacks, at least in Connors' view, is the cold-blooded refusal to yield emotionally when the match turns ugly. Connors loved ugly. Ugly meant the opponent was uncomfortable. Ugly meant the fight had begun. Sabalenka sometimes looks like she wants to escape those moments rather than live inside them. Champions don't escape pressure. They make pressure their home. The difference between winning and defending